What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Adam back at you again for the hashtag Rebound video series. It is Rebound Day 118 here in Houston, Texas. I've spent the last, including today, 118 days trying to figure out how to get back on my feet after a complete train wreck of a life took place. And this week has been, there's a lot of anxiety going on right now. In fact, I'm going to check right now, but I'm pretty sure that, yeah, as of right now, this is one of the things that goes with having these part-time jobs. The new work week starts tomorrow, Monday morning. I'm assuming that I'll be working tomorrow morning, but here it is, it's almost noon on Sunday. There's no schedule for next week at all. Nobody that works at this bakery knows what their schedule is for next week, and we are on the last day. Like, if there's no schedule tomorrow morning, nobody's going to show up to work. So I know I'm going to see it. And I looked at the whole schedule for the whole place, and not a single person is scheduled for the whole week. And I know the person who has to do that is busy, and I don't, and she's a real nice woman, and I don't have any problems with her. But it's, like I said, it's just one of these things that goes with a job like that. And this whole week, I'll get into this before the video is done, but this has been a stressful week. I started out sick. You saw how sick I was in the last video. You could hear it in my voice, and I'm still a little bit stuffy today. I feel normal. I'm not taking any pills. I'm not taking any potions. And I'm feeling pretty good overall. There's a little bit of leftover. The sun came out a couple of times this week, but it's been cloudy and rainy, and there's more to that. But I'm just going to get into like the anxiety part of it first. And it's kind of like, I use this analogy a lot, that I'm worried about a number of things, and I've just trained myself to be worried about something at all times. There are legitimate things that I need to be concerned with. Legitimate stress-filled things that anybody in my situation would be stressed out about. But to go along with that, there's some of it's unfounded. I've got my driver's license, more or less. I have to wait for the piece of paper to come in the mail, or the card. But I have an official Texas driver's license now. I have the temporary printout that they give you. So, I'm starting to get that stuff together. And there's really nothing that I have to do anymore other than wait. That was a stress-filled thing. A lot of other just small things adding up, including, even though I'm living in southern Texas, Houston, Texas, that's way, way, way better than Jamestown, New York, better than Pittsburgh in terms of the weather, I can ride my bicycle to get around here in January. Up there, that's not happening unless I have a mountain bike with studded tires and a serious amount of winter clothing and gear, to the point where I'm probably spending as much money as it would cost to have a car at that point. But one of the analogies I use when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, and whether you're going the direction that God wants you to go, it's kind of like if you're going the wrong direction and you're not doing what God wants you to do, you're going to feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall every day, trying to break through the wall that's in your way. But at the end of the day, the only thing you're going to get is a headache. You're just banging your head on this wall, trying to break through, punching it, whatever. You're going to end up with sore fists and a headache at the end of the day, and that wall is still going to be there. It's a brick wall. You're not getting through it. But God, when you go the direction that He wants you to go, God will find a way for you to get around that wall. He'll dig a tunnel under it for you. He'll lift you up and carry you over it. He'll show you the way around it. He'll get you through it. And there's a better analogy that I like to use. And it's kind of like when you know that you have to accomplish something, and even especially if you know you're supposed to do this, God wants you to do this thing, or it's just a thing in your life, you absolutely must do this. Let's just say if my probation officer calls me up on a Tuesday and says, I need you to meet me on Wednesday, that's not an optional thing. I may be able to say, well, I'm working, can we do it when I'm not at work? Or, there might be some negotiation there, but this is not an optional thing. And let's just say that I have some drop dead thing that I have to do. Absolutely have to do. There's no way around it. It has to be done. I don't have a car. Maybe I don't even have a bicycle. And so what if I woke up on a Tuesday morning knowing that I have to walk 20 miles to get to something today that absolutely has to be done? Nobody's going to be able to give me a ride. I don't have a bicycle. I don't have there's no public transit. Excuse me. Oh my God, I can't even talk today. But please bear with me. I'm still, like I said, I'm feeling better, but I'm still kind of gunked up and sick in the head. But let's just say I woke up on a Tuesday morning knowing that I have to walk 20 miles today to get to something, whatever it may be, and there's no option to get out of this. It has to happen. If it doesn't happen, there's going to be some severe consequences that are worse than going on a 20-mile walk. And then knowing that after the thing's over, or whatever I have to walk 20 miles to do, I got to turn around and walk back home. It might take me more than a day. In fact, it's going to take me more than a day to do it. And I've got to pack a bag accordingly, knowing that I'm going to have to sleep somewhere. I'm just going to have to tough it out and go, the whole entire time and sleep it off when I get done and I'm home. It would feel awful, wouldn't it? If you were facing something like that, wouldn't it feel pretty awful? The day that I knew I had to walk 11 miles on a nice day to go to Jamestown. My God! I might have to start this video over if I just don't. This is the raw deal. I'm doing this raw. I'm doing it live. And then I'm saving it and uploading it. That's how it's going to be. The day that I knew I had to walk 11 miles on a nice day to go to Jamestown and get my driver's license, turn around and come back, 5.5 miles each way. That kind of felt awful. In fact, the first day that I could have done it, it was pouring rain, and I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. So I ended up going on Tuesday because the weather was going to be a lot nicer. And I figured one more day isn't going to break me. But if I had to do a 20-mile walk and it was some sort of do or die situation, rain or shine, no matter what, I have to do this. There's no choice. And then, like I said, knowing that I need to walk 20 miles to get home, I'm going to have to leave at least 7 hours in advance, 8 to be safe. So let's just say if I had to leave there at 9 in the morning, I would need to leave my house at 1 in the morning just to be on time. Let's say I needed to be at this place at noon. I would have to leave at 4 in the morning to be on time. And imagine the dread that you would go through leading up, knowing that you have to do this and there's nothing you can do about it. How much would that eat away at your sanity? And if you sit on your ass at home and you give up and you don't do the thing, there's going to be even more severe consequences in your life than you're going to go through by doing the thing. Okay, so the way I talk about it, or the way this analogy works, is when you're on the path that God wants you to take, and when you're walking when you go the direction He wants you to go. Yeah, I could sit on my ass at home and give up, and then nothing's going to happen, And I don't even believe God will do anything for me if I'm not willing to do anything for myself sometimes, or if I'm not willing to take that first step. But when there's so many times that I can think of in my life where when I'm on the path that God wants me to take, it's kind of like I finally resign to the fact that, yes, I have to do this. And I walk 2 miles of the 20 miles, and somebody drives past who recognizes me and pulls over to the side of the road and says, hey, get in the car. Maybe it's a friend coming home from a late night out. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in someone's car that I know, and I'm offered a place to crash for a few hours, and don't worry, I'll give you a ride in the morning, and you'll be on time, and I'll even take you home. We'll leave about 8 in the morning. Don't worry about it. I got you, man. No problem. I'll give you a ride. And before you know it, that 20-mile walk that you were dreading turned into a 2-mile walk with some time to spend with a good friend, and you got a ride to the thing and home without even having to ask for it or look for it. It just magically appeared when you needed it. And so that's what I'm trying to keep in my mind right now, because I can come up with examples in my life, tons of examples where a random one just popped into my head right now. A random example that I think it fits perfectly. I was in Danbury Federal Prison, and there's a law called the First Step Act. Donald Trump signed this into law when he was president. And how it works for certain crimes that are nonviolent and certain, there are certain crimes where when you're in federal prison, they give you programs to do and classes to take and stuff like that. But you sign up for this First Step Act. And as soon as you sign up for it, or it's supposed to kick in when you get to the prison system, the whole thing's kind of a mess. And you'll understand as I tell the story. So you're supposed to get 10 days a month off of your sentence for a period of time, up to a year. So you can get a year off of your sentence. 10 days per month, as long as you sign up for things. You don't even have to take the classes, you just have to make an effort. You basically have to do what they tell you to do, and you'll get your 10 days a month. And then certain programs, once you're in the programs, that moves to 15 days a month off of your sentence. And it accumulates month after month after month. And so when I got to the prison to serve my entire sentence, I would have been out in August. That would have been my entire sentence, would have got me home in August. For the standard good time that you get, I should have been out in like June, okay, July, August. So you get like, how 80%. You're supposed to serve 80% of your sentence unless you get in trouble, and then they take away your good time. They hand it to you from day one, and then it's up to you to lose it. So 85% of your sentence is what you actually serve, unless you do things that get you in trouble and you lose that 15% good time that you earn from day one. This First Step Act is on top of that. So I was supposed to go home sometime in June. And so this First Step Act, when I got to the federal prison, they told me, oh, you don't qualify for that because your crime disqualifies you from that. And I thought the guy was wrong. But you have these things called counselors that it's a caseworker that deals with you when you're in prison, and they're the person that's supposed to coordinate with you and any programs that you're supposed to take, and they're supposed to be the ones that coordinate with probation when you're getting released and all that kind of stuff. So you have a case manager, basically. And this case manager, he just looks at me and he goes, well, if you can prove me wrong, then fine, bring the stuff to me, but otherwise it's not up to me this isn't my problem. He's like, as far as I'm concerned, you don't qualify for that. He's like, it says it right here in front of me. And I thought he was wrong, but I don't know how to use these legal systems. I don't know how to use these computer systems. Like, The whole thing is designed to keep you there. The whole system is designed to keep you in the system. And so for me to find this information and then pay, I would have to pay to print it out and bring it to him if I could find it. And so I just gave up. I resigned to the fact that I'm going to come home in June. Fine, it's only 2 months. I can deal with it. So I took little baby steps. I didn't totally give up. This is the 20-mile road that I'm facing in front of me, and I don't even know where to begin to try and find what I need to find to prove to the guy that I'm right and he's wrong. I don't, even a lawyer isn't going to help me with this. She was like, good luck. And so, because, once you're in prison, you're a public defender. That's the end of that. That's not your lawyer anymore. You don't have a lawyer anymore unless you can afford to pay for one. And so I don't have $100,000 to pay a federal case lawyer to help me. So it is what it is. I'm on my own. And so here's the 20-mile walk I'm facing. And I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, by the time I don't even know where to begin. But I would see opportunities and conversations that I was having with people. And I would, we all talk about our stuff when we're in there. And so somebody said they could help me try and find this stuff. And I wasn't really like breathing down this guy's neck or anything, but people offered it, and I kind of said, yeah, that's cool. And like, if we're at the library, if I see you, and every now and then, and this went on for like a week, I would just be like, hey, you want to, oh yeah, sure. But I wasn't pushing people really hard, but I was poking and prodding and trying to figure this out. I would sit down with the law library. It's basically a CD-ROM on some broke-ass old computer from the 1990s. And you got to sit there and you got to basically be a lawyer to figure out how to find stuff in this system. It's not like Google where you can just search for it. No, this is like, you got to know a lot of stuff to use this stuff. And so I tried, but every time I'd sit down, I'd get nowhere with it. And so, but I was trying. I was going on the first 2 miles of the 20-mile walk. Well, I was sitting with 2 people in our bunks in this dorm that we lived in. Once you get to the low security prisons, they don't have individual cells. It's just a big army barracks with bunk beds. And so I was sitting with a group of people and we were having this conversation, and I said something to the effect of, yeah, the guy, he told me I don't qualify for the First Step Act, but I know I do. I just don't know where to get the piece of paper or where to find the thing that I need to tell him that I'm qualified for that. I don't even know where to begin looking for that. And I was talking to somebody one-on-one about this. Another guy who was a couple bunks away, he heard me talk, and he goes, hey. He goes, hold on a second. And he looks over in this little folder that he has, and he pulls out a sheet of paper, and he goes, here you go. This is what you need. Give him that. And I look at it, and it's exactly what I needed. It literally verbatim listed my crime as a crime that qualifies me to get the First Step Act, that didn't disqualify me. Right there. And then this guy, a couple of days later, he comes up to me and he hands me some more printouts. And he goes, hey, I went over to the law library the other day and I remembered you. And he goes, I just printed out a few extra things for you to help you out. Here's where it is in the law. Here's the statute. He went and got the whole thing and handed it to me. And he goes, here, just take this to your case manager and show him. And so I was a little bit nervous. I was like, I wonder what this case manager is going to do when I drop this on his desk. Well, the next day that I saw the case manager in his office, I knocked on the door. I went in with it, and he looks down at it, and he looks back up at me. He's like, oh, I'm really sorry. He's like, it looks like I made a mistake. And he goes, I'll fix this for you. And within a couple of days, they had updated my records to show that I now get the First Step Act. But you don't get all of that time at once. You get 10 days at the end of every month, that you're good. So that is why if I got all of the days that I was supposed to get for the First Step Act, I would have been leaving around March 25th or something like that. But because I don't get those credits until the end of the month, they were saying, well, you might leave on March 20th, 25th or whatever, or you might leave on April 10th or something. There was a window of 2 weeks. So I never had a day that I knew I was going home. They said as soon as you get those credits for that First Step Act, you're going home that day. We won't even, and so the First Step Act credits came on April 1st, which triggered me to go home that day, and then they made me stay another day in the prison just because they couldn't book my transportation to get home properly. And okay, fine, whatever. Worst April Fool's joke in the history of April Fools, or one of, being told you got to stay in prison for another day. April Fools, haha. You thought you were going home, but you're not, haha. So there you go. But that is kind of what I'm talking about with this 20-mile hike that you're dreading. But you take a few steps in the right direction and God just shows up to give you a ride for the rest of the way. You walk the first 2 miles and God pulls up to the side and says, hey, get in, I'll give you a ride. Boom, and all of a sudden you didn't have to walk that 20 miles after all. I didn't have to go through all the bullshit and nonsense to find this First Step Act stuff. I would have not found it. I would not have found it. By the time I got out of Danbury, I started figuring out how to use that law library because a few other people kind of showed me the ropes. And I had a few people kind of just walk me through things. People were showing me things about their own cases and telling me, here's how you look up stuff and here's how you find what you're looking for. And it's convoluted and it's difficult. It is not easy. But once I got the ropes, once somebody showed me how this system works, I was able to actually learn quite a bit about different things that I would have to do when I got out of prison. Like how probation works and like lots of different questions that I had answers to before I got out of prison. I was able to answer myself by looking in this law library because a few people had gone to the length of showing me. They got me started on the right path and I was able to kind of go from there and build upon it. And then I was able to start finding things on my own. But at first, no, I couldn't find this thing and I wouldn't have had time. But I did make the effort. I took and instead of just resigning and not trying, I was at least just putting it out there in the world and taking those first few baby steps. And then Jesus pulls up next to me in the Cadillac and says, get in, homie, we're going for a ride. And boom, I got to go home on the second day of April instead of sometime in June. And 2 months in prison is hell. And if you can come home 2 months early, it's worth the effort to do so. But there was a part of me that had just resigned and decided to give up. But like I said, it's like you wake up knowing you got to go on a 20-mile hike and it's do or die, but you don't want to do it, but you know you have to. You take those first steps, you go 2 miles, Jesus pulls up next to you and says, get in the ride, we're going. I'm giving you a ride. I got you. You don't have to do the 20-mile hike after all. And so I'm feeling that today, and I'm trying to keep that in my mind, and I look up the book, Jesus Calling, that I constantly read and talk about on this channel. And I went to today's entry. Today's January 12th. And I went to the entry for today. And what does it say? Jesus is telling me, let me prepare you for the day that stretches out before you. I know exactly what this day will contain, whereas you only have vague ideas about it. You would like to see a map showing all the twists and turns of your journey. You'd feel more prepared if you could somehow visualize what is on the road ahead. However, there is a better way to be prepared for whatever you will encounter today. Spend quality time with me. I will not show you what is on the road ahead, but I will thoroughly equip you for the journey. My living presence is your companion each step of the way. Stay in continual communication with me, whispering my name whenever you need to redirect your thoughts. Thus, you can walk through this day with your focus on me. my abiding presence is the best roadmap available. And I just thought that was ironic because I was just going through this analogy in my head about taking a 20-mile walk down the road to get somewhere and not knowing with everything unknown. And here, the Jesus Calling entry for today, he's like, I'm not going to show you what's on the road, but I'll equip you for the journey. And you're going to want a map, but the only thing you need to do is talk to me. And I thought it fit right in with what I'm already thinking about today in more of a coincidental way. I just feel like that book, there's so many times when the book just lines up exactly, like in ways that are way more than coincidental with whatever it is that I'm thinking or feeling. And so talking about, where's this anxiety coming from and all of that. And yeah, there are some things that are on my plate right now that are stressful. I can think of 5 or 6 things that are stressing me out pretty hard right now. Some of it is just things aren't moving fast enough. And that's the short version of a long story. And another reason that I'm stressed out right now is the weather. We, as human beings, we need sunlight. We need a lot of sunlight. I firmly believe that this is why they fuck with the clocks in the winter and they make it so that it's dark. So that when you get out of your office job at 5 in the afternoon, it's already dark. They want you to be depressed and dysfunctional in the winter when you're already miserable because of the cold temperatures. The cold is bad enough, but what really affects us dramatically is this lack of sunlight. And so they can manipulate the clock to give you even less sunlight, because if they left the clocks alone and kept us on permanent daylight savings time, I know that the regular time that we move back to is the more accurate time, where noon is when the sun is at the highest point in the sky. But daylight savings time, they do this to us every summer so that we get all this extra light after you get done with work for the day. If you're somebody who works, 9 to 5 or whatever the case may be, when you get out of work, you still have sunshine. You can still absorb sunlight. But during the winter, as soon as those clocks are rolled back, you leave the office, boom, it's dark. It's dark. And when you're coming into work in the morning, it might be dark. Or the sun's just starting to come up. And, we are experiencing the severe Arctic blast down here in Houston this week that's going on all over the country with the cold temperatures and the snowstorms and everything. And, I can assure you that it's so much worse in Houston than the rest of the country. At least that's what the woman who cut my hair last weekend said it was going to be. And I'm like, bitch, I'm from New York. And she goes, oh, she's like, that's nothing. The cold, it hits different down here. You'll see. And I'm like, you mean it hits different like a pansy? It hits like a pansy? Because where I just came from, it's 16 degrees outside with tons of snow on the ground, and that snow's not going to melt for the next 2 months because it's not going to be warm enough for snow to melt. But aside from the fact that winter in Houston at its worst is like October in Jamestown, it doesn't mean that this week didn't suck. Monday, I rode my bicycle to work. I rode my bicycle Monday, Thursday, and Friday. I had to wear full finger gloves on Monday morning, but I'm too stubborn and I wouldn't put on pants. I have a long sleeve thermal jersey that's meant for cycling and outdoor stuff, and it keeps you pretty warm when it's cold. I had an ear band around my ears and some full finger gloves, and that was enough to get myself to work when it was 29 degrees outside. The ride home that day, it wasn't so bad. It was in the mid-40s. Mid-40s, I can go barehanded. I don't need gloves. My hands won't get cold enough, especially it's a 15-minute bike ride each way. So my hands aren't going to get so cold from a 15-minute ride if it's 40 and above. I had 2 days off but I was still pretty sick. In fact, when I came home on Monday, I was still a bit of a train wreck because I was recovering from being sick. But each day after that, I was feeling better. Maybe not 100%, but 85%. Right now I'm at about 90%, which that's not too bad. But on Thursday morning and throughout the day, the low and the high temperature were exactly the same. It was 36 degrees for the entire day. That was when I rode into work in the morning and when I came home. So at first, I wore shorts again, 36 degrees. It was warmer than Monday by, 7 degrees. That's significant when you're talking about, cycling. It was sprinkling a little bit on the way to work, but I took my rain. I have a rain shell, a waterproof jacket, and it fits in a tiny little pouch. It folds up into itself, and it's this compact little rain jacket. But I took it out of my backpack because I never seem to need it. And even if it's actually raining, I don't wear it. If I had to ride in the rain to work, I would put it on before I leave the house. But I don't really care about getting wet on the ride home because it's only 15 minutes. So I don't even bother. And the days that it has been raining when I come home, I just get wet. I don't care. I've yet to have to ride into the bakery in a really bad rain, nothing more than a little sprinkle, nothing that really even gets my clothing wet. But when I left to come home on Thursday, it was raining hard enough to be annoyed by it before I even got on the bicycle. While I was, taking the lock off and putting it in my bag, it was already pretty bad. About halfway home, it let up a little bit. It eased up, and I was thinking for a second, I'm like, oh, it's going to chill out. And then all of a sudden, the skies unleashed a downpour, a severe torrential downpour. And so I had to ride, it was about 3 miles in a severe downpour in shorts, a long sleeve thermal, and nothing else. And it was 36 degrees outside in a severe downpour. And that was about 15 minutes of absolute misery, pure misery. When I got home, I needed someone to get me a towel so that I could dry off enough just to come inside the house. And I was frozen inside, frozen to the core for hours. As soon as I got home and dried off, I put on a pair of heavy jeans, a dry shirt, and a thick sweater, a real thick sweater, a winter sweater, and socks. And I bundled up in the house. And I couldn't stop feeling cold. We ate dinner. And after dinner, a few hours after I got home, I filled up a bathtub with hot water and just soaked in the tub for about an hour. And my body temperature started to regulate again and started to feel normal again. And then that night, I had to take time and I had to pull out a whole new set of cold riding gear, another zip-up long sleeve North Face jersey that I have. It's got some company logo embroidered on it that I used to work for, and I'm trying to get a seam ripper to remove that because the company, they were a bunch of douchebags. But it's a very nice North Face long sleeve zip up thermal, perfect for cycling. I just don't like wearing it because it's got that logo on it. But I have a dry ear band, and then I got the bright idea to try out some Columbia convertible hiking pants to try it out on the bicycle and see if they'd be comfortable enough to bike, because I don't want to really buy those full-length spandex pants. It's just not my style. But they do make full-length bike pants. I just don't have any, and I don't want to spend the money right now. And so these convertible hiking pants, I have several pair of them because I used to live right next door to an outlet mall, 3 miles away from an outlet mall that had a Columbia store. And so they have these zippers on the knee where you can convert the pants into shorts by removing the bottom half of each leg. And so they're real convenient. They're really lightweight. They're great for backpacking and camping and stuff like that. They're synthetic, so if they do get wet, they'll dry quickly. The only thing I'm really missing, but I could easily get a pair on Amazon, are these neoprene booties that go over your cycling shoes, and they keep your feet warm when it's really super cold. Because one thing, cycling shoes, unless you get cycling shoes that are meant for biking in the winter, they have airflow. Air just flows right through them, and which is what you want when it's warm out and when it's hot out, so your feet don't get all stank and sweaty. But in the winter, that's misery. The cold air just goes whipping right through those shoes, and your feet will freeze. And so they make these shoe covers. They're made out of neoprene, and they have a hole in the bottom for your cleat so that you can still click into your pedals. And, depending on how much you're willing to spend, the quality varies from brand to brand, but they keep your feet nice and toasty warm when you're cycling. But right now, the distance I'm going, the 15 minutes each way, 20 minutes if I'm going slow, it just doesn't, I don't get that cold. But on that day that I was biking home in the freezing cold rain, that was a different story. Different story. So Friday, I left the house wearing a t-shirt, the zip-up North Face thermal, and an outer shell, the waterproof jacket that I have. And it was 39 degrees out, so I left the full finger gloves in my backpack. I don't like wearing them unless I absolutely have to. If it's cold enough for my hands to freeze, then yeah, the gloves are good. Otherwise, they mess with your dexterity. I just don't want to wear them. The ear band is great because I don't want to wear a full hat. Plus, I want to keep my helmet on. And the ear band keeps your ears warm, and having warm ears makes your whole body feel warmer. And then I wore the Columbia convertible hiking pants as a test to see if they would be something that I would want to wear when it's colder out. And so that ride, it was much warmer, way warmer, not just because of the temperature being warmer. I think it was like 31 degrees when I left. And I don't know, but it was dry outside. But the only bad part is that waterproof shell that I wear is completely waterproof. And that means on the outside, it keeps the water from coming in, but it doesn't let moisture out. It doesn't breathe. And so you won't get wet from the rain coming at you, but you will eventually get soaked from all the sweat that builds up inside of it when you're wearing it. And so I don't really like wearing this thing. It does have a zipper, so you can open it up and you can adjust it and you can work with it, but I don't like wearing it unless it's a downpour. It's meant for wearing when it's really raining, and it's better to not get soaked from the rain itself. And it blocks the wind, and so it's a good thing to prevent hypothermia is what it boils down to. It's definitely not a dirt cheap thing, but it wasn't expensive. It was less than $50, and I'm telling you, it's probably one of the better things I've ever bought in terms of camping equipment. And it's compact enough that you can take it with you just about anywhere. And you never really know when you're going to want protection from the rain, because sometimes that rain just shows up out of nowhere. But because I wore that on the way in Friday, everything inside the shell was completely soaked with sweat. And so when I put on my zip-up thermal to ride home later that day, it was wet. It was still wet. So that the breathability of a raincoat is the biggest reason why it would be worth it to spend the money, because a breathable rain jacket that's waterproof but also breathes and allows moisture to leave your body but doesn't allow it to come in, those are expensive. But that's the reason why it's worth it, because you really want a jacket that allows the moisture to leave your body but doesn't allow rain to get in. That's the key to a rain jacket, a really good one. But you could spend hundreds of dollars on something like that. But either way, it was a good test. The Columbia pants, they worked better than I thought. I don't like wearing pants like that because you run the risk of your pants getting snagged in your chain rings as you pedal. Or you just have to wrap a strap around your ankle to keep your pant leg from rubbing up against your chain or your chain rings. And but these pants, they fit tight enough around the ankles that I don't feel like I need to put a strap around my ankle. I do have some Velcro straps, just some random Velcro straps that I could use for that are big enough for that. But I didn't even see it necessary to pack after how everything kind of fit today. But maybe I'll throw one in my backpack. The number of things I keep putting in my backpack, it piles up over time. And my backpack keeps getting heavier and heavier as the weeks go by. And so that's why I'm constantly looking for things I can pull out of the backpack and don't have to carry with me to and from. And so it's a game. It's a constant game of, if you do forget the one thing, then you need the one thing, then you've got all this other stuff that you don't need. It's like, it's just a game. And the one day I didn't have the raincoat, and I should have. But it takes up space that I don't, it just makes it harder for me to carry other things. And so it's just a constant game of trying to figure out what's the right thing to pack and what's the right stuff to bring and what's the right stuff to leave out. And so, if I had, let's say I had a 15-mile ride each way, I would probably wear cycling shorts, for example. The pants, the reason why I like the pants is they look like normal, they're hiking pants, but I look like a normal person. I'm not walking around in some gay spandex like a girl wearing yoga pants, like male yoga pants. But like I said, if I was going longer than 15 miles each way, I would wear cycling shorts. But I wear regular shorts on top of them so that they're underneath my shorts. And so if I get off the bike to stop at the grocery store or who knows what on the way home, I don't feel self-conscious like I'm walking around in spandex. People will kind of look the other way when they see the bike helmet and they'll get it, but I don't, it's just not my style. And anything more than 30 miles or more than an hour, I'm wearing bicycle shorts. But right now, I don't even own a pair of bike shorts. Everything I had for my bicycles, other than the bikes themselves, I lost when the FBI drove a tank into my house. All my cycling gear, my cycling clothes, and my cycling kit that I would take. If I was going on a road trip and taking the bicycles with me, everything that I would need for that was in one big bag, a specific bag for cycling stuff. It has like compartments for helmets and things like that in it. And I lost that bag. When the FBI drove a tank into my house, that bag didn't make it. And so that's why I've had to spend hundreds of dollars on cycling equipment since I started biking again, because I had nothing but the bicycle itself, and the bicycle hadn't been ridden in so long that the tires were, there's issues on the bike, maintenance issues, because it's not a brand new bike. So anyway, this week was a good lesson in preparedness and how unprepared I am for the severe cold weather. Because it doesn't get that severe down here, but it got severe enough that I found out I wasn't even prepared for Houston winter weather. I'm obviously much better prepared here than I would be if I had to do this kind of crap in a place like Jamestown. But in Jamestown, I would have never gone outside in the winter without certain things in a bag and certain things with me, and studded tires on a mountain bike and things like that to deal with the conditions up there that you're never going to see down here in Houston. So normally getting soaked on the way home is no big deal. Getting wet is not that big of a deal, but when it's 35 degrees outside and you're in a torrential downpour, that's hypothermia that can take your life it can actually kill you in a short amount of time. Without the heat generated by your body from the cycling, you could die quick. If I was that soaking wet and not riding my bike, let's say just walking it might have been enough to do some serious damage, but the cycling, there's just enough movement and enough body heat being generated, and I did have enough. I had synthetic long sleeve stuff on, so the clothing that I was wearing, even though it was soaking wet, it still traps the heat inside, and it's not like wearing cotton. Cotton would kill you. If you were in that situation in a cotton shirt, a cotton long sleeve, that's the end of that. You're done. I probably wouldn't have been able to get home in one piece, even though it was a 15-minute ride. I can tell you about the worst bit of hypothermia that I've ever encountered in terms of the closest call I ever had. It was on a bicycle ride, and it was a long time ago, and it was in Pennsylvania. Back in the day, I would strap a bicycle down. The bicycle I'm riding right now, the Red Rocket, I would take the wheels off and strap everything down into the front of my canoe and just lash it all down with bungee cords. And that thing wasn't moving. That thing was solid. And it actually helped keep the front of the boat. It helped keep the boat from sticking up out of the water. I'd put enough weight up front that I could sit in the back of the boat where it's easier to steer from instead of having to sit in the middle of the boat. I had a nice comfortable seat in the back of the boat. And then I could just go cruising down the river from the back seat because I had the front of the boat ballasted out to where everything was balanced. And so I would just canoe down I've done this on multiple rivers, but I would this weekend, it was late October, and it was in northwestern Pennsylvania. I took the canoe from a town called Tionesta on the Allegheny River and paddled all the way to a place called Emlenton. And I spent 2 days canoeing about 30 miles each way down the river for a total of about 62 to 65 miles on the river in my boat. 30 on one day and 30 on the next day. In between, I spent a night at a really cool campsite on the river. It was warm when I left, but cold temperatures creeped in. It was the end of October, and up there it gets cold. It can get cold that time of year. It even started snowing on the night that I was camping, but I had a good fire. The next morning started out cold, obviously, and the chill, there was always a chill throughout the day, even though it was bright and sunny, and so it was warm enough to wear a t-shirt all day, but there was a bite in the air. It was chilly. And the chill lasted through the entire day. But it was bright and sunny, and so that direct sunlight hitting you all day, it just helped keep me warm. And, I even had thoughts throughout the day of maybe getting out of the river sooner and shortening up my bike ride back to the vehicle, because I'm going to have to get on a bicycle and ride back to Tionesta when this is all done. And so, anyway, I kept going, and I ended up in Emlenton, where I intended to go, on the right after the sun went down, right after, because you don't want to be on the river at night. It's too hard to see. That's a recipe for you just don't want to do it. Even on a fairly calm river like that, you could get in a lot of trouble being out at night on the water, especially by yourself. So I got out in Emlenton, but by the time I got my bicycle put together and got the canoe locked up against a tree and my stuff kind of hidden under the boat that I couldn't carry on the bicycle, etc., I knew I was going to be looking at about a 40, 50 mile bicycle ride to get back to my vehicle in Tionesta. And GPS wasn't as good back then as what we have now. So I kind of had to take a route that was easy to follow without the maps and, just from my knowledge of the area and all of that. And so I wanted to try and keep to the riverbank as much as possible and avoid hills as much as I could. But either way, it pushed the distance even higher than I could have probably gone back under 40 miles. But I would have had to stop and look at maps and things like that. But if I go the way that I know, I can just go and not have to think about it. So either way, it was going to be at least a 3-hour ride back to my Jeep Cherokee that I had parked at this boat ramp in Tionesta. And when the sun went down that night, it was already cold. Like, it was already too cold for a t-shirt, and I wasn't looking forward to it at all. And the temperature just kept dropping. And as usual, I wasn't dressed for it as warmly as I should have been. And within the first half hour of the bike ride, the temperature dropped to the point where I couldn't even breathe. It was so cold. And at some point, my chest was so cold. My whole body was so cold. No matter, I was going uphill, standing on the pedals, and my heart was beating, and I'm generating the body heat, and it's still so cold that I can't take it. I pulled over, and I tucked a shirt. I tucked my shirts into my shorts in different ways, and I just started gathering up dead leaves on the side of the road and started stuffing them into my shirt and my sweater and all down the arms, and just stuffing leaves into my shirt everywhere I could stuff dead leaves as insulation to try and help warm myself up. And it definitely helped. I looked like a scarecrow that we used to make on Halloween when we were kids, and fill up a pair of jeans and a flannel and put a paper bag on top for the head or whatever. That's what we used to do when we were kids, and that's exactly what I looked like, just a scarecrow. And it definitely helped. But every time I would climb up a hill, it definitely was a big boost to the warmth. But every time I had to go downhill and coast, I would have to use my brakes and slow down. So this was adding to my time that it would take to get back, because I couldn't even go full speed downhill because the wind and the ice cold air hitting me that fast. It was so frigid that I couldn't keep my body temperature high enough. And I had full finger gloves, and I wasn't completely, it wasn't like I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I did dress warm. I did have a sweater. I had like a hoodie. I had a hood over me, and I had the means to stay warm-ish, but it wasn't warm enough. My body temperature was low the entire time. I know it dropped below freezing. It was probably 30 degrees or less for over 3 hours, maybe 4, as I cycled back to this vehicle. And it was agonizing. And the only thing keeping me from freezing to death was the body heat generated from the cycling. I just knew that I had to get back to my vehicle, and I knew that you damn well better not stop. When I got back to my vehicle, I put the bicycle on the bike rack and got in the Jeep, and I just cranked the heat on full blast. And I just sat there trying to warm up, and I couldn't. I sat there shaking, like convulsing, for maybe 20 minutes while I just sat there at the parking spot. And so finally I put it in gear, and I drove all the way back to my canoe, the 40 or 50 miles back to where I left the canoe. And I'm shivering the entire way. The heat was on full blast. And there's nothing between where I parked and where I picked up the boat. Like, there's nowhere to stop. There was, nothing's open. Everything's, it's late, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. And it took everything I had. It took everything I had to get out of that vehicle and get the boat tied up and the rest of my camping gear and get it all loaded up in the truck. It took everything I had, all my energy, and I still couldn't stop shaking the whole time. I got back into the Jeep, and I drove back with the heat still on full blast. It's like an oven inside this Jeep, and I can't get warm. I found a gas station where I could get some hot cappuccino or whatever, hot coffee and some hot food, and I was still shaking uncontrollably. I had to pump gas. I couldn't stop shaking while I was pumping the gas. Drank hot coffee, ate some hot food, still shaking uncontrollably the whole way home. The whole way home. It's about an hour and 40 minutes to get back to Pittsburgh. And I never stopped shaking the whole time. Shivering like I was freezing cold, but I'm sitting inside this vehicle just shivering. Like the kind of shivering you get when you have the flu and even if you get under 20 blankets and your body is still just shaking, and you're feeling horrid. That's what it was. And I went, as soon as I got home, I didn't unload anything. I did nothing. I went straight into the house, went straight to bed, covered up with as many blankets as I possibly could, and it didn't matter how much heat I threw on. I could not warm up. At some point, I eventually stopped shaking, and I was able to fall asleep. But I was freezing cold inside to my core for like the next 2 or 3 days, and it wasn't even winter yet. This was late October, and it can still get warm in Pittsburgh, but it still took me 2 or 3 days for my body to stabilize and to return to feeling normal. And that was the closest I ever came to getting hypothermia, like legit. Like, you got to go to the doctor, ER, or get some medical attention, hypothermia. Maybe I had hypothermia, and I just plowed through it to some extent. I probably had it to some extent, but it wasn't like, I don't think it ever reached the point of a medical emergency, but I definitely got that taste of, I totally understand what it would feel like for a person to fall into a river in the middle of winter, and then how fast you can just completely die from the cold. Because at some point your body you have no control over it anymore, because your body, you just can't get warm enough no matter how warm it is. And so, like, I've had some other experiences out on hikes and bike rides to some degree. It's almost always when it's raining and cold at the same time. I've been on hikes where it starts to rain. And, if it's cold and snowing, that's bad in itself. If it's really, really deeply cold, like negative, like below zero temperatures, and it's snowing out, you're still better off than if it's fairly cold and raining. Because it's the wet, it's the moisture that's the dangerous part about everything. If you can be out on a hike, being out on the rain on a day that starts out warm, and so maybe all you took with you is a t-shirt, and it starts to rain and it gets somewhat chilly, that can kill you if you're not prepared for it. I've been out on hikes where it was, we weren't hiking that far and we weren't planning on anything. It was 75 degrees. All we were in t-shirts and shorts, and we've got just the basic day hiking stuff, and it starts to rain, and by the time we get back to the vehicle, we're like this, and we're just like falling apart and completely train wrecked. But in those situations, we'll have a dry change of clothes or something, to help out with that situation. But you can get caught out in the rain on a fairly warm day, and your body temperature can still drop to the point where it kills you. You can die from hypothermia when it's 75 degrees outside if you get wet and you can't do anything to dry off. That can kill you if you're not prepared for it. 60 degrees, rain, boom, hypothermia. Cotton t-shirt. If you wear a cotton t-shirt that won't dry, and cotton, when you wear cotton and it gets wet, it sucks the moisture and it sucks the heat out of your body. Whereas wool can get wet, but it keeps its insulative property, so you'll stay warm if you're wearing wool that gets wet. But cotton that gets wet is a whole different story. Cotton will kill you. That's why they say cotton kills. I never, ever, ever wear cotton out on a hike or any kind of outdoor activity where you can get wet. For a bunch of different reasons. Cotton's the most comfortable, but it's not the best for that type of stuff. And so, it's for me right now, I'm going on these 15-minute bike rides, so none of it's that big of a deal, but I definitely got a taste the other day of, you got to be a little bit more prepared for what the weather can do down here. And I would say by the end of this week that's starting right now, today, it's supposed to be in the 70s by the end of the week, at least for the high temperatures of the day. And, by a week from today, it should be in the 70s at some point in the day. It may start out cold, but it'll reach 70s sometime in the day. And so even if it rains, not a huge deal. If I'm only going 15 minutes to and from work, I won't even wear the raincoat more likely than not. It depends on how hard it's raining. But it's just something to think about. You know, if you live in a place, even like Florida, you know, you could die of hypothermia outdoors in Florida going on a hike because it is known to rain pretty hard in the state of Florida, and the water makes a huge difference in terms of the temperature and the temperature of your body. When you get wet, it's a whole different story. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be fine. But, you know, when it's 36 degrees outside and you're completely soaked from head to toe, like you just climbed out of a lake, and you're riding your bicycle and getting that air blowing against you, that is a recipe for disaster. And so now I'm a little bit more prepared for that, and I'm keeping the raincoat in my backpack from now on, and I'm not going to leave the house without it. It's just like a tire patch kit. It's going to be in there. So that's that. It was a long-winded conversation. Moral of the story is don't forget your raincoat. But, you know, getting back to the anxiety part, you know, the anxiety and this concept of always looking up, expecting another bomb to fall out of the sky. There was another good example was a phone call that I received the other morning, one of the mornings this week. And it was from a client who's a good friend of mine. And for some reason, I see this text message from him saying, "Hey, do you have time for a quick phone call?" And my mind immediately goes into, oh no, what's going on? This can't be good. Oh, am I going to be losing this job? And all these different thoughts going through my mind, all because there was a text message in the morning that said, "Hey, do you have time for a quick phone call?" And my mind automatically just assumes all these bad things, all these crazy thoughts. Enough that it was enough to jolt me right out of bed. And so I got dressed, I jumped out of bed, I grabbed my coffee, and I got him on the phone, and we started talking. And it ended up being good news. He wanted me to do some more work for him, extra work. And we came to an agreement that works for us on it, and I'm getting busier with my projects and my work. And it was a good thing. It was a good phone call. And so when this whole anxiety started to creep in, first of all, I knew what it was, and I really quickly had to stop and say to myself, "Adam, stop. You know, this is that inner voice that you keep using to do this to yourself, and none of it is real, so just stop doing it." So I did that before I even called him on the phone. I was already telling myself, you need to stop doing this. Acknowledge it for what it is. It's the thing that you do, but it's not real. There's no justification for this. Stop expecting everything to be the worst. Just stop. None of this is real. Stop doing it. And, you know, secondly, I wanted to get up earlier that day and get off to a good start. And that phone call and the fact that he texted me that early, it ended up being a catalyst where I was like, well, I'm already awake. I may as well get up and start work. And so I got more work done that day because of the phone call. Not only were there no negative aspects about the phone call, the results of the phone call, or anything, I had more work to sink my teeth into because of the phone call. But the phone call was also a catalyst that helped me get up and moving earlier than I otherwise would have that day. And so it really just boils down to this is just another random example of how going through something extremely traumatic in your life can sometimes trigger this kind of thought process in your mind, no matter how hard you try to fight it off or try not to do it. Someone told me a long time ago that the best way to fight it off is not to try and fight it, but to acknowledge it and accept it for what it is. Just acknowledge the fact that it's your own nerves and your own mind working against you, and just tell yourself that that's not real. It's almost like a little kid that thinks there's a monster under the bed. You're just going to have to look under the bed and realize it's not real. It's not real. This is in your head. And so, and I mean, this day and age, the day and age we live in, kids have every reason to believe there's a freaking monster under the bed, because, you got to watch out for these Hollywood and government-sponsored pedophiles around every corner that want to, kidnap your kids and ship them off to Epstein Island for the fucking Eyes Wide Shut party and the adrenochrome harvest. But the powers that be, they're spying on us with everything that they can slip into our homes, too. The cameras, the microphones on every device that you use, the ads that show up on social media whenever you're talking about something, and then the thing that you're talking about just magically starts showing up on your phone. And, I wouldn't be surprised if you're buying teddy bears and baby dolls for the kids that have cameras in them at some point, But aside from that tangent, at some point you have to stop worrying and face the thing that you're worried about. And in the situation of being worried about things that your own mind is just making up that aren't real, the best way to fight that off is to just acknowledge that's what it is. Just realize that's what it is, and that you really have no... when I got that text message on Monday saying, hey, you got time for a quick phone call, and for whatever reason, my mind just went down this path of it's all falling apart and this is going to be bad news and blah, blah, blah. I had to sit there and say to myself, do you have any evidence at all, to justify what you're saying to yourself right now? And the answer was no. You're just making it up. The only evidence that you have is dude wants to have a phone call if you're available. That's the evidence. That's it. Everything else that you're adding to this is crap that you just made up on your own. And so, in this example, getting out of bed, making the call and getting it out of the way to start my day off and actually it was starting my day off with a win and shedding a layer of this onion skin of worries that has been keeping me a little bit paralyzed over the last few weeks. It helped me get some momentum to take my day in the right direction and actually get some things done. And so it was January 8th on that day. And this was another situation where after I got off the phone and I kind of went through all of that in my mind, I decided, let's look up Jesus Calling and see what Jesus has to say in his book today. And that day he said, softly I announce my presence. Shimmering hues of radiance tap gently at your consciousness, seeking entrance. Though I have all power in heaven and on earth, I am infinitely tender with you. The weaker you are, the more I gently approach you. Let your weakness be a door to my presence. Whenever you feel inadequate, remember that I am your ever-present help. And it seemed like it spoke to me, because I feel like the weaker that I get mentally, the more I feel like a washed up piece of trash, a washed up and worthless turd who has nothing left to live for sometimes. Or, I'm just going to be some broke ass loser who can't do any better than a minimum wage job for the rest of my life, struggling to survive when I've got kids and other things. I got people that depend on me that I can't do anything to help. And these are just, when you start feeling like that, it's a good time to just reach out to God and ask him to take on these burdens that I'm carrying around. I've talked about it before. It's like having a 72-pound backpack that I'm carrying through the Dolly Sods Wilderness in West Virginia, which is one of the most rugged terrains you can ask for in the Midwest or the Northeast United States. There are other places like this, but the point is all of carrying all that weight in a place that's already difficult to be. If you weren't carrying anything, this is a difficult place to hike. Carrying 72 pounds on your back, it just brings you down. It makes everything 100 times more difficult in terms of how much distance you can cover and how much energy you have at the end of the day. And carrying a 72-pound backpack full of stress and anxiety also makes it difficult for you to cover distance or get things done in your day, and it saps all the energy that you have. So at the end of the day, you're going to be even more worn out than you would have been if you just put the backpack down and got to work. And so the more that you can start removing the unnecessary weight and baggage from your stress and the things that you carry around that your own mind is making up, that you don't even have any use for, it, but you felt like you still needed to carry it, you'll get a spring in your step, and all of a sudden you can hike 30 miles in the time that it used to take 10 by getting rid of the 72 pounds that you're carrying around. And so I was watching a video. The girl, her name is Tati something or other. I've talked about her in some other videos, and she was talking about the same subject of overthinking. Like, how do you stop yourself from overthinking? Like I did that morning when I got the random text from a client who wanted to have a phone conversation. Number one thing is, when you catch yourself doing it, recognize it. Instead of just going down that negative downward spiral in your head, recognize that you're doing it and catch yourself. And that helps you to stop. She also says to go and try something different, do something different, meditate, do yoga, go for a walk, exercise, do something that takes your mind off of what's going on and actually does something positive for your life. She also says don't resort to mind-numbing behaviors like drugs and drinking and just endless scrolling on the phone and just, looking at social media all day and just, the kinds of behaviors that allow you to procrastinate all day. She even suggests, hashing it out with a friend or someone that you trust. Or, maybe in my case, it's putting out a YouTube video for all of you guys to interact with me. But I talk about this thing with other people as well. YouTube's not the only place I'm talking about this stuff. And, these are feelings that come and go. I don't feel like this every single day, all day long. It's just waves. It comes and goes. There's a cycle to it. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. And it just kind of, like she says, when you catch yourself doing it, recognize it, try to do something different, get some exercise, do something, just pick something up that you got to get done and do it. And it's amazing how even a little thing like that can cause you to reset your mind and to start just getting past that anxiety. And it dulls it down, it tamps it down. Does it mean it'll never come back? No. I think for me, the only real solution to my problem is to find money. It's money. It's income. I need a certain level of income that's stable in order to provide for just a basic level of survival, and I don't have that right now. The bakery job, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. The work week begins tomorrow, and nobody at the bakery even knows what their schedule is yet. And I don't even know if I'm going to get 12 hours next week or 40 hours or somewhere in between in terms of, so I don't even know what my paychecks are going to be. Even if I'm working 40 hours a week there, it's not enough money to survive. It's $10 an hour. You cannot survive on that. So I do have other things, other irons in the fire. Things are, but it's all just, nothing is stable. There's no stability at all. No stability at all. And I'm just clawing at everything like a cat falling down the side of a steep hill that, no matter how much I claw, I'm just sliding down. And that's what it feels like. And it's like, yeah, I've got more money in the bank right now than I've had most of the time. In fact, I'm trying to think I've got more money in the bank right now than I probably have had since the day I got out of prison. And yet, I don't feel confident enough to do the things I have to do financially because, yes, I can pay for certain things right now, but there's no stability with the income. So what happens a month from now? or a month from I go and I get a place to live, what happens when rent's due on the 1st? I don't know. So this is part of like having to put your faith in God and let him work it out for you. But I really don't know how long I can live on the knife's edge of instability and insanity before I just completely fall apart. It's already having a major effect, negative on me. Like with it, God expects you to live on faith and faith alone and just expect him to fix everything for you. But how long can you live like that without having any idea where the next meal's coming from, if you will? When the next payday's coming, there's a certain level of instability that it's like I don't feel like I can take it for much longer. It's having a negative effect already, and it's already been problematic for the last month or so. But I'm going to leave you with one more entry out of Jesus Calling, and I'm just going to let you guys go for, until I do the next video. But on January 9th, which is the next day after the last one that I read to you, it says, I am with you and for you. When you decide on a course of action that is in line with my will, nothing in heaven or on earth can stop you. You may encounter many obstacles as you move toward your goal, but don't be discouraged and never give up. With my help, you can overcome any obstacle. Do not expect an easy path as you journey hand in hand with me. But remember that I, your very present helper, am omnipotent. Much stress results from your wanting to make things happen before their times have come. One of the main ways I assert my sovereignty is in the timing of events. If you want to stay close to me and do things my way, ask me to show you the path forward moment by moment. Instead of dashing headlong toward your goal, let me set the pace. Slow down and enjoy the journey in my presence. I mean, that pretty much sums up a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about for the past hour when it comes to anxiety. Don't worry about the timing. I see deadlines approaching that I don't know how I'm going to meet them. But I can pull examples out of my past that prove to me that it's more than possible and it's more than doable. I've told this story I told this story. I'm going to leave you with one more story, and that's it, because I've talked about this story before, but this just popped into my head randomly while I'm sitting here. And I've told you the story about how I moved into a new apartment, really nice place in Pittsburgh, and I was really happy there. And I moved into this place, but it sucked all of my resources, and I was working for myself. It was a situation kind of like now. I don't know where my next paycheck was coming from. I really didn't. I never knew when I was going to get paid for 6 years of my life because I was freelancing for a living. I would invoice clients, but I just didn't know where the income was going to come from. And at this point, I know I was waiting for a check to come in the mail, but it could have been, I might be waiting another month for it. Okay, so the first month I moved into this house, I had enough money for the move, and then I had money left over. But that first month, moving is expensive, and moving sometimes costs more than you anticipate. And by the time that first month was over, living in that new apartment, it was a half of a duplex, beautiful place. Long story short, the end of the first month, I was broke and had no money. And I didn't know how I was going to pay for my second month's rent. And now it's the first of the month, the very first day of the new month. And I have no money in the bank. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was kind of like, I knew I had some money coming, but I didn't know when it was going to arrive. And I knew I was going to have to call this landlord and sweet talk my way through getting an extension, But this is the very first time after I moved into a new apartment when rent is due. This isn't like I've been there for a year and she knows that I'm a reliable tenant who pays his bills on time and he's just in a bad way right now and I'll give him a couple extra weeks. No, this was the first time I have to make a rent payment on time to her after getting the keys to the apartment. So I'm going to be on the wrong foot from the first of the first month that I have to make that rent payment after the move-in. And so as I'm trying to figure this out during the morning, I get a random phone call from a friend of mine who I haven't talked to for at least a year or more, maybe 2 years. It's been a long time, and this phone call came out of nowhere. And she goes, listen, the reason I'm calling you is because I'm in a bit of a jam. I have a client who needs me to do a project for them, and I've done it up to a certain point, but there's a part of this project that I don't know how to do, and I need to find somebody who can help me and do it. And she goes, if you can agree to help me with this project, if I can rely on you, if you have the time to do this and to take on this part of my project, she goes, I can come over to your house today with a check for $5,000 and give you a down payment to start helping me with this project, but I'm going to need to get started like right away, like today, if possible. And I said, well, let me check my calendar here. And, I played that whole, I didn't want to sound desperate, but literally a $5,000 check fell out of the freaking sky on the first of the month. She came over to my house. It was probably 11 in the morning, gives me the check. We talked for about an hour, and now I've got to go deposit the check in the bank. My phone starts blowing up. It's the landlord. She really nasty with me, angry. She's like, look, it's the first of the month, and I haven't heard from you yet today. When are you coming over with the rent? What's going on? It's noon on the first of the month, and she isn't even waiting until the end of the day on the first. She's already taking like a threatening, angry tone with me at noon on the first of the month because she hasn't got the rent yet. And I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, what would have happened if I had to tell her, I'm going to need a couple more weeks to pay you. She probably would have started the eviction process that day and had me kicked out. But instead, I said, I'm on my way over right now, actually. I was just going to stop by your car wash and drop it off. She had an auto detailing business, and she had like a place where they wash the cars and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to stop over by your auto detailing business and just drop the check off right in your hand. How does that sound? I'm like, I was out doing errands, and I thought that would be the best way to do it today instead of, you having to come over here or me putting it in the mail today. Like, I can get it in your hands right now. And she goes, oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, thanks for taking care of that. You have a good day. And all of a sudden, she's the friendliest old lady on the planet because now she's getting her money, like, now. But that's what I would have been dealing with had $5,000 not just fallen out of the freaking sky on the day that I needed it. And, I told you in the last video about how I was in another situation because I got fired for not taking the shot. And I woke up one morning and I said, I think I'm going to sell the Mini Cooper. And 2 hours later, there's a knock at my door, and it's a guy who's asking me if I want to sell the Mini Cooper. I had just gotten my first cup of coffee. I hadn't had time to go take the Mini Cooper down to the car wash and wash it up and clean it out and get all my stuff out of it and take the pictures and put it up online to sell. I had the 20-mile road in front of me, and I took 10 steps down the road. And dude comes over to my house, knocks on the door, and says, hey, you want to sell that car? And I've got tons and tons of stories like this. I'll give you one more small one. I lived in this beautiful house that the FBI drove a tank into, okay? But I needed to move out of the house I was living in at the end of May. So I had plenty of time. But the last time I had looked for a new place to live, it was hard. And for whatever reason, the housing market was a mess. And it took me months to find. Now I was on a month-to-month lease, so I had no deadline. But it was very difficult. And so what I told myself was, I casually spent some time looking up, doing research on how much I should expect to pay, what my price range needs to be, and what general neighborhoods to look into. And so when it got January 1st, New Year's Day, it wasn't like a New Year's resolution thing, but I said to myself, I think now I should start getting serious about finding a new place to live. And if I find a place before May, I'll figure out the logistics of everything. Maybe I'll just pay for both places until the lease is up here. But I got to get out of this house by May. I'm not signing another year's lease. And this landlord that I was renting this house from, he was a stickler. If I signed another year lease, he is on the money. You're not getting out of the lease a month early. You're not getting, if you sign a new lease, it's going to be for a year. He's not going to come to an agreement where you can stay 6 more months. It's going to be a year. And so anyway, I had a hard and fast deadline to get out of this house. But I had 5 months. So I get on Craigslist and I go to the housing section. This is on New Year's Day that year. The very first ad on the housing section for Craigslist was this gorgeous house out about 70 miles outside the city of Pittsburgh, right next to a 30-foot waterfall out in the woods, surrounded by Amish country and all of that. And just this gorgeous, gorgeous house with a sunroom and a detached building that was set up that I could use it like an office and all that. This is the very first ad, the first ad that popped up on the day I decided I would get serious about looking for a place to live. The first ad, the first one, not the second one, not the fifth one, the first ad at the top of the page. On January 1st. And this place, the price, you couldn't beat it. And so I went and looked at the place. I called her that day and we talked. And January 2nd, I was up there looking at it, going on the tour of the place. We did the deal right there on the spot. I gave her a check. And so I worked out the magic of negotiation. If you don't ask, you won't receive. I got them to come down on the rent even more than they were asking for a certain amount of money for rent, and I got them to come down from that price to less money. And they said that I could move in at the end of March as long as I paid for the security deposit up front. And as long as I paid for the first month's rent by the end of March. And then on top of that, these people were so nice. There's a lot of stories to tell about this, but they gave me the keys on the spot. And they said, you can bring up your stuff whenever you want. Well, this is your place now. You gave us the down payment. They're like, if you decide to move in and start living here, please, we're going to ask you to pay for the first month's rent. But, so January, February, March, I had 3 months to move. And so I had a Jeep Liberty, and it was 70 miles each way. So I was doing about 3 or 4 trips a week, just filling up the Jeep Liberty to the brim, bringing a truckload of stuff up to the house. And then I would spend okay, let's clean the kitchen, or I'm going to do this or that. And I had someone helping me a little bit. Long story. That's another story for another day. But we were cleaning the house and getting it ready, taking our time. So we'd bring up a vehicle or two full of stuff, unpack everything and get it put in the house. And so that on the day, and so basically I had 3 months, and I needed to get a group of friends together one time. I had a list. I made a list of everything in the house that I wanted to take that I would not be able to fit in my own vehicle. And so furniture and things that were big, too big to fit in a vehicle. And so I got a group of friends together on one day. I rented a moving van. We packed the 15, 20 things. And then we just, we took some time to throw whatever boxes and other things that we could cram in there. But it was the most easy-going 3-month move I've ever, other than the constant driving back and forth between the two places, was great. And I'm just saying, everything just fell into place magically. And it happened on, the very first day that I woke up and said, you know what, I think I need to get serious about finding a place to live. The place just magically appeared. And the next day, I had the keys in my hand. And I had 3 months before I even had to start paying rent. And so there was a month, the month of April, because I moved in at the end of March. So for the month of April and May, I was paying rent at 2 different places. I was paying rent at the new house and the old place for 2 months. And that was a little pricey, but I had a good job. And I wasn't sleeping at the old place anymore, but I was still using it. I was taking those last 2 months that I treated the old house like a store. I just had it. It was like a yard sale, a Craigslist yard sale. And I had tons and tons of stuff for sale. And so anytime during the week or whatever that somebody was interested in coming to buy something from me, I would meet them at the old house. And so I was moving stuff, and I was making money off of the stuff that I was getting rid of that I didn't want to bring to the new house. And then some money on top of that, just bicycle stuff and different things and furniture and things I didn't want to keep anymore. And so by the time my last day came at that house was completely clean and empty. And it was the landlord at that house was a douchebag, and we went through some beef. I gave him back the keys a month early because I had I believe I had until the end of May, and I still had to pay for May. But I believe it was May 1st. I just left the keys on the counter and said, you can have your place back, because I had everything out of there, and I had absolutely no reason to even want to go into this place again for the next month of my life. I figured I'd just give it back to him a month early. But we still had some beef, and he was a douchebag, and he tried to do some shady things after I moved out of that place, and it was a bad scene. But when it all came down to it, everything just went smooth. And so there's 3 stories right there about how God just shows up right on time. And it almost always happens. It's always like I'm not expecting it when it happens. I wasn't expecting my Mini Cooper to be sold 2 hours after I woke up and said, I think I need to sell that car. I wasn't expecting to find a house to move into, the most beautiful home, the best place I've ever lived in my life, including my parents' home. Like this house that I lived in, I wasn't expecting to wake up on January 1st and find myself a place to live, let alone the best place I've ever lived in my life. The best home I've ever had in my life was that house. And the other story about I wasn't expecting to wake up on the first day of the month when rent was due and I had no money in the bank. I had less than $5 to my name that day. I didn't even know how I was going to go grocery shopping. And $5,000 just fell out of the freaking sky from a person I haven't talked to in over 2 years, who just randomly called me that day and said, hey, I got a check for $5,000 for you if you want me to bring it over. So these are the things I'm trying to keep in my mind of how the universe works, how God works when you are going the direction he wants you to go. He'll just make something happen. It says right in this Jesus Calling, when you decide on a course of action that is in line with my will, has to be in alignment with his will. Nothing in heaven or on earth can stop you. Nothing. You may encounter many obstacles as you move towards your goal, but don't be discouraged and don't give up. With my help, you can overcome any obstacle. And it even says, don't expect an easy path as you journey hand in hand with me. But remember, I am your very present helper, and he's omnipotent. It means he can do anything. He can make the guy show up to buy the car that you decided to sell 2 hours ago. He can make it so that the first time you log into Craigslist to look at what apartments are available, you find the house that you're supposed to move into. He can make it so that when you need to pay rent on the first of the month and you have no idea where the money's going to come from, you get a phone call from someone you haven't heard from in over 2 years who says, hey, I'm going to come over with a check for $5,000 if that's okay with you. So I don't know how it's going to work out for me over the next month or two. I don't know how it's going to work out for you guys and whatever you guys are going through. But I hope that you can look back at your own life and your own circumstances and you can dig up stories like this where things just magically appeared out of nowhere, where it was obviously divine intervention at that point. And so I hope that whatever you're getting into over the next month or two, I hope it all works out for you. I hope that there was some useful stuff in this video. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just jibber-jabbering away for nothing for an hour and a half, but then I get comments from some of you saying that it's been really helpful. So it's helpful for me to tell the stories and to kind of work out how I want to move forward with the content and the direction that I want to go with this stuff. It's kind of helping me get my thoughts together and get I don't really know what I'm going to do in terms of, the grand picture of everything. But putting these videos out right now, whenever I have the place to myself and I can do so, it's helpful. It's helpful in a lot of different ways. So with that, I'm going to let you all go, and hopefully we'll talk again soon, but keep the comments coming. I appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, there's a bunch of different links in the description below. Check them out. And that's all I'm going to say. Peace.